Hey everyone, DisturbedShadow here with the next review in my In Flames discography. Today we're talking about their sixth album entitled Reroute to Remain, 14 Songs of Conscious Insanity. Now, this is the first album that's sort of a significant change in style for In Flames, out of the more traditional melodic death metal style. It's also the first album to feature or to not be produced by Fredrik Nordstrom, who is one of the greatest melodic death metal producers of all time. So I feel like they kind of went with a very, very, very dramatically different direction on this album. Not that it's a bad thing. I know a lot of people like to complain about the change in style that In Flames has gone through since their inception, but I think that it's still a pretty decent style that they're doing here. Now, this is the first album I actually heard from In Flames. The first songs I really got into from them are from this album. So let's just jump right in and talk about some of my favorite tracks on this album. So the first track I want to talk about is actually the first In Flames song I ever heard, which is the title track and the first track on the album, which is called Reroute to Remain. I absolutely adore this song. This is one of my favorite In Flames songs ever. It's probably the best song on the album, or at least one of the best songs on the album. So what I like about the song is that it has this really, really crushingly heavy guitar riff in the beginning after a cool little keyboard intro. It just has a really good progression of this like hard hitting verse, and then it goes into this cool thing in the chorus where it's clean vocals layered on top of screaming, and it just sounds really cool the way it does. And that's the part of the song that really pulled me into this song, and it pulled me into this band even. When I first started out, as soon as like that chorus came in, I just sort of fell in love with it. And then I started checking out a lot more of In Flames' stuff, and I'm a huge fan of them today because of, in part, this song, because I just absolutely love this song. The next song I want to talk about is the second track, System. Now, this is another pretty good track. It has this cool, clean part after the. It starts off really heavy, like with really heavy guitar riffs and pounding drums and just really fast screaming. Then it sort of pulls back, and it's just keyboard and bass and drums, and Anders is just singing clean, and it just sounds really cool. And then it goes into this really catchy sort of chorus that I know it's really fun. And I saw them the last time I saw them live. They played this song, and it just had a really nice dynamic to it, and the crowd really got into it. Next song I want to talk about is the first single released, or the first or second single actually, called Trigger, which a lot of people find this song to be weird because it has like this part where it's just like some, I don't know, some weird effects on the guitar, and then there's like a sort of electronic drum beat sort of, which I don't know, some people thought that part was weird, but I really like how it breaks up the song a bit. And then again, it has another really catchy chorus which really pulls in the listener. Then the next song I really want to talk about is probably one of In Flames' most well-known songs. It's also the first single off the album, which is called Cloud Connected. This song is just an amazing song. It has an incredible main guitar riff that just pulls you into the song and just makes you just want to headbang along with it. Plus, it has really, really like catchy verses and choruses that really, like, again, it pulls you into the song and sort of, I don't know, it's just a really fun song. And I've seen them play it live twice, and both times it's just incredible. And the crowd really gets into the song. Okay, one more song I do want to talk about is. Oh, that's all. Those are all the. Oh, yeah. Sorry, I'm a little mixed up today. I've got a lot going on. Anyway, next song I want to talk about is Dawn of a New Day. What I like about the song is that it's just acoustic guitars, no electronic guitars at all. It's really cool the way that works. And then again, it has the bass and drums layered in there. But there's a really cool layering of acoustic guitars, and then it sort of alternates between the spoken word and then a more like melodic singing part, and then there's a bit of screaming at some points. I just really like the way the song progresses. One gripe I have with the song is that it's kind of repetitive once it starts repeating itself further towards the end of the song, but it's still a really different song from In Flames, and it's one of the more unique songs on the album because of that. And the next song I want to talk about is the second to last track called Metaphor. What I like about this is just all clean guitars, and then it's got some violins happening, and it's just a really interesting thing going on here. And Anders is doing all singing on it, it's sort of interesting to listen to. Plus, apparently, I didn't really hear it, but in the credits of the album, there's a female co-vocalist on the song. I didn't really notice it the first few times I listened to it, but when I went back and listened to it again, I sort of started noticing that in there. So it's a really interesting song in that respect. So that's what we're checking out. Overall, I feel like there's not enough songs on this album that really sort of stand out. It's like a lot of it, like the guitar riffs are more simplistic and stuff, but a lot of times the riffs between the different songs sort of start to sound really similar as you go through the album. There are, of course, a few standout tracks, like I mentioned, Reroute to Remain, Cloud Connected, Trigger, that really have these main riffs that just sort of jump out at you and pull you in. Because they're not just simple, like, chuggy riffs that happen a lot on different parts of the song. So that's one gripe I have with the guitar work on this album. And the other issue I have with the guitars on this album is that there's just not a lot of guitar solos on this album. Like, previously In Flames were known for having these crazy guitar solos, like on Colony and Clayman and The Just Race. There were just these really cool, very melodic solos that jump out at you, and they're just incredible. The playing on those songs are incredible. You don't really see a lot of those types of solos on this album. There's a few, like, attempts at a solo on, like, Reroute to Remain and Cloud Connected is sort of a solo-y like thing, but it's not really a solo per se. And then there's a couple songs, the song Drifter and the song Egonomic have sort of a solo. It's a little bit more solo-y than some of the other songs on the album, but it doesn't really get up to the same caliber of stuff you were seeing on their previous albums. There's something that was really cool to see from In Flames was the cool solos that they've done in the past, and then they were just not present on this album, which is a little bit of a letdown. Now let's get into talking about the actual sound of the band here. First, I want to talk about the drums. Daniel on drums. He's incredible on this album. This is some of his best drum work we've seen so far. It's just amazing. He's doing these really cool, like, technical playing, and then he throws in these cool fills all over the place. It's just really, really good playing. And they just sound heavy and powerful and stuff. But the one issue I have is that they're really, really loud in the mix. Like, they tend to overpower everything else in a lot of places. A lot of times it's hard to hear what the guitars are doing, or it's hard to hear what Andrews is doing on vocals because, again, it gets overpowered by the drums. But the drums are really played very excellently on this album. Like I said, the only issue I have with it is that the drums is a bit too loud in the mix, and so it tends to overpower everything else. Now let's talk about Jesper and Bjorn on guitars. I really like the guitar tone on this album. It's thick and crunchy and heavy, and just it sounds really good. But like I said, although there are not enough guitar riffs that just jump out at you and pull you into the song, there are the exceptions I mentioned, like on Reroute to Remain and Cloud Connected, where there's these really big riffs that just get stuck in your head because they're so catchy. Now, they're really, really well done songs, but it doesn't really appear throughout every song on the album, so it sort of tends to bring it down a bit. Let's talk about Peter on bass. There are some really cool bass lines on this album. Like, as on previous albums, he's tended to follow along with the guitars a bit, but he does a lot more stuff where he goes on his own, and then there's different songs, like on System, where the guitars go away, and the bass is what stands out there. That's really cool. Or like the song Dawn of a New Day, the acoustic guitars are doing their thing, and then the bass is going along and doing its own unique thing. Or then there's the song Transparent, where the bass is turned up really, really loud, and it's distorted more than it is on the other ones, and it adds a cool thickness to the song that just makes it heavier in a way. And I really like what they did with that song, that the sort of the bass got to shine through on that song. Anyway, Peters does a very good job on bass. Now let's talk about Anders on vocals. The screams are really good again, but again, this interesting thing I noticed is that with each progressive album, his vocals have gotten higher in pitch when he's doing the screaming. But again, the screams are pretty good. They're not as good as, say, like Colony were, but he's still doing a pretty good job. Plus, what I like what he's doing here is he's adding new types of vocal approaches to this album. Like, he's doing different types of singing, where it's more like a growly-like singing, or he'll be doing more melodic singing, and it's a lot better than singing he's done on previous albums, like on Clayman and Colony a bit. There were parts where he would do some singing, but on this album, that he sort of has a technique for singing better. There's a lot of cool things with layering of vocal types where he's doing singing and then layered on top of that, and behind that are screams and stuff, so it adds this really cool feel to the vocals that you really haven't seen before from In Flames. and that they don't really do again on later albums. But I thought it was a really cool thing to see on this album, that layering of different vocal tracks that sort of makes the music feel deeper because there's just all these different layers going on that sort of come together to give it a thicker sound. Let's talk about the lyrics now. There's some pretty good lyrical content on this album. Some of the choruses sound weird, or like the way the lyrics are written, like it sounds weird, but the concepts being covered are really cool. The lyrical content is a lot more personal on this album than previous albums. It's pretty much all focused on personal struggles and interpersonal relationships and stuff like that, as opposed to the more philosophical stuff that you were seeing from them on previous albums, which is a nice change of pace to see them trying to do something different on vocals. And one more thing I want to mention with the vocals is that they sort of try and go for big catchy choruses with singing as opposed to the previous albums. They're sort of going for a more mainstream approach on this album, which, take that how you will. Sometimes people think that's a good thing, other times people think it's a bad thing, so I think it comes down to opinion and whether or not you like the approach that they're going for on this album. But overall, I think it's a pretty good album. It's not as good as some of their previous releases, but overall I would probably give it a 7 out of 10 because even though some songs tend to start to sound generic a bit, there are those songs like A Route to Remain, System, Trigger, Cloud Connected, and Dawn of a New Day, and Metaphor that sort of stand out and sort of make up for the more generic sounding other songs on the album. But like I said, it's a 7 out of 10. It's still a decent album, and it's definitely worth checking out. And it does hold a special place in my heart as being the first In Flames album that I heard, and one of the albums that really got me into melodic death metal. So that's it for the review. Be sure to like the video if you liked it, and subscribe if you want to see more of my reviews. I've got some more ideas for I'm going to take a break from In Flames to review a few other albums, but I will still try to keep up with In Flames albums. And the next one we'll be talking about is, of course, one of the more controversial albums in terms of the way it sounds, which is Soundtrack to Escape, which I'm going to try and release next weekend. So be sure to check that out, and I'll see you guys next time.